Before bounce houses required waivers and birthday parties came with event planners, there was a time when turning 8 or 9 years old meant something simpler, louder, sweeter, and completely unforgettable. Birthday parties in 1980s America were not polished. They were chaotic, colorful, and absolutely magical if you were a kid. If you were invited to a party in 1986 or 1988, the excitement started days before. The invitation came home from school folded inside your backpack, bright paper, balloons printed on the front, maybe a cartoon character. It told you the time, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, the address, and one important line, RSVP. Most parties happened at home. You would pull up to a modest suburban house with a cluster of cars already lining the street, streamers taped around the front door. A handmade happy birthday banner stretched across the living room wall. Balloons everywhere, tied to chairs, floating near the ceiling. Some were already half deflated by the end of the afternoon. The decorations came from the local party store or the grocery aisle. If the birthday kid loved a specific character, that theme took over everything. He-Man, Strawberry Shortcake, the Smurfs, Care Bears, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by the end of the decade, plates, napkins, tablecloths, all matching plastic cups in bright primary colors. The birthday child was easy to spot, usually wearing a party hat with an elastic string tucked under their chin, maybe a button pinned to their shirt that said birthday boy or birthday girl. Slightly embarrassed, slightly proud. Parents stayed at the beginning. They would come inside, chat briefly, then leave. This was drop-off culture. No hovering, no group texts. Just trust that you would be picked up at 4 o'clock sharp. Inside, the house felt transformed. Furniture pushed against the walls. The coffee table moved aside to make room for games. The television might be playing music videos quietly in the background, MTV flickering on the screen. But the focus was the noise of kids running in every direction. The first activity was usually organized chaos. Musical chairs, a cassette tape loaded into a boombox. When the music stopped, someone scrambled for a seat, and someone else was out. Pin the tail on the donkey, taped to a wall. Blindfold spinning. Laughter when the tail ended up nowhere near the donkey. There might be a piñata hanging from a tree outside if the weather was good. A stick passed from child to child. Candy rained down when it finally broke open, everyone diving to grab as much as they could. If the party was outdoors, sprinklers might be involved in summer. Slip and slides rolled out across the lawn. Grass stains guaranteed. Parents' new clothes might come home dirty. That was part of it. Then there was the food. The table was covered with simple, unmistakably 1980s party food. Pizza cut into small squares, usually delivery from a local spot, sometimes from a chain like Pizza Hut. The smell filled the house, paper plates stacked high, bowls of potato chips, Doritos, cheese puffs that turned your fingers bright orange, pretzel sticks, maybe pigs in a blanket if a parent was feeling ambitious. Drinks were 2-liter bottles of soda, cola, root beer, and orange soda poured into small plastic cups with too much ice, or juice boxes for younger kids. No sparkling water, no custom drink station, just sugar and more sugar. And then the cake. The cake was the centerpiece, often homemade, a sheet cake with thick, brightly colored frosting, maybe a plastic toy pressed into the top to match the theme, or a cake from the grocery store bakery with airbrushed characters and your name spelled carefully in icing. When it was time, the lights were dimmed. Everyone gathered close. The candles were lit, all 8 or 9 or 10 of them. And then the song. Happy birthday to you. No fancy remixes, just a room full of kids shouting off-key. The birthday child leaning forward, eyes closed for a second, making a wish they would never reveal. Then one big breath to blow out every candle in a single try. Applause, cheers, frosting served in generous slices. Corners with extra icing were fought over, paper plates bending under the weight. After cake came the moment everyone waited for: the presents. The birthday child sat on the floor, surrounded by a pile of wrapped boxes, bright wrapping paper, bows taped on top. Each gift was opened slowly while everyone watched. No rushing, no tearing through everything at once. You held up each toy for the room to see. A new Barbie, a G.I. Joe figure, a board game, maybe a cassette tape, maybe a Cabbage Patch Kid if you were lucky. You said thank you every time, because your parents were watching closely. Sometimes you could feel the silent comparison happening. Who gave the biggest box? Who brought something small? But mostly it was excitement. New toys to play with immediately. Goodie bags waited near the door for the end of the party. Small paper sacks filled with candy. A plastic whistle. Stickers. Maybe a tiny puzzle or a bouncy ball. You grabbed yours on the way out like treasure. Not every party was at home. By the mid to late 1980s, party locations expanded. McDonald's birthday parties became popular. A reserved table, paper hats, a visit from Ronald McDonald himself at some locations. Kids sitting on molded plastic seats, eating Happy Meals together. Roller skating rinks were another favorite. Neon lights, disco balls, music blasting while you circled the rink in rented skates that never quite fit right. Arcade tokens included. Parents watching from the sidelines. Bowling alleys hosted parties with pitchers of soda and shared lanes. Chuck E. Cheese locations grew busier with animatronic shows and mountains of arcade tickets. But even at those places, the formula was similar. Games, pizza, cake, presents, sugar. What defined birthday parties in 1980s America was the freedom. Parents organized the basics, but kids filled in the rest. Running through the house, laughing too loudly, playing with new toys before the wrapping paper was even cleaned up. There were no digital invitations, no themed backdrops designed for photos. Pictures were taken on film cameras, a few snapshots. Everyone crammed onto the couch. You would not see the photos for days or weeks until they were developed. The party lasted 2 or 3 hours. That was it. Long enough to feel special, short enough to avoid total meltdown. By the end, the house was quieter. Balloons sagging, wrapping paper stuffed into trash bags, a child sitting on the floor surrounded by new toys, overwhelmed and happy. Birthday parties in the 1980s were not extravagant. They were not curated for social media. They were messy, loud, fueled by soda and frosting. But they felt big when you were small. They marked time in a way that mattered. Each year meant a bigger bike, a new game console cartridge, a different set of friends from school. You could measure your childhood by those parties. Looking back now, what stands out is the simplicity. The decorations taped to the wall, the cassette tape rewinding for another round of musical chairs, the smell of pizza and buttercream frosting in a suburban living room. For many who grew up then, those parties are frozen in memory. The noise, the sugar rush, the feeling of being at the center of attention for just one afternoon. And then Monday came, back to school, another year older. Do you remember what your birthday parties were like in the 1980s, or which theme you begged your parents for? Share your memories in the comments.